We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to yet another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from South Central Texas, Austin, where the motto here is, keep Austin weird. Well, I am doing my best to contribute to its weirdness on this dreary Monday. It is 2/11, the 11th of February. We are about 8 days now, 9 days out from the end of Aquarius. I have a new post up on my website about the shadow of the age of Aquarius. If you want to find out more about iterations of the age of Aquarius throughout time, it's really the 20th century, starting with the Bolshevik Revolution, getting into the 60s, the Great Society, and some of the players involved. You can go and have a look at that on my website, robertphoenix.com. There will be more updates to that and more installments. I see at least 2 to 3. I haven't even gotten to 2000 and 2001 and the version of Aquarius that was being rolled out right around that time. So there's more to come. I also want to do a detailed look at the life of Gene Sharp, who plays a huge role in the next version of the Age of Aquarius. Another interesting wrinkle about the Age of Aquarius, I was watching, actually I didn't have the TV. The TV was on. I wasn't watching it, but I was doing something else. And apparently there is a member of Congress who is a big meditator and a presence of mind kind of guy. And he is working quite hard to institute these kind of presence of mind moments inside the congressional chamber, and he's working to introduce these presence of mind moments in public schools. Now, on the surface, that sounds great. Why not? But it gets into some really interesting strategy, let's put it that way. And the strategy is, well, if you can't have prayer in the school, and I'm not advocating prayer being in the school one way or the other, but if you can't have it, then why do we have to have these presence of mind moments? I mean, perhaps my kid doesn't really want to participate in the presence of mind moments. I mean, I'm not saying it's there yet, but he's looking at legislation. And by the way, it was happening when my son was in California. And look, there are good things about it. I'm not necessarily knocking it, but I think it's a personal choice, not a federally mandated choice, and certainly not one to be made in a public school system. But if you read my latest article or my latest post on the shadow of the Aquarian Age, you can see where a lot of the framework, the matrix of the current political milieu that we're in right now with the economy, with social programs, that takes place during the time when Saturn was in Aquarius, after the death of JFK. So what we're talking about here is the fall, right? It's the fall of Camelot and then the rise of something else. And then we have the Great Society and all these social programs. And you have the National Education Act in 1965, which for the first time yokes the federal government to public school education and money. And so you can see where everything has become kind of an octopus as a result of the Great Society. Anyway, you can find out more about that on my website. Today I'm going to have Brian Tuohy on. I talked to him about an hour ago, and he was on Steve Sabin this morning. And Sabin is a nationally syndicated radio talk show host, and he is based out of Washington, D.C. He's one of the few mainstream media people that has had Brian on the air to talk about the Super Bowl, professional sports, fixing, and so on. So I'll have Brian on, and we're going to play his recording shortly, the two, he and I talking. And then after that, right around a half an hour from now, we're going to have SiStar MyRah join us. So let's not waste any more time. Let's play this interview that I did today with Brian. It's about the Super Bowl and trying to understand what happened on Sunday. He doesn't have any clear, definitive answers, but there are some interesting nuggets of information that you'll be able to parse through this 30-minute interview. So here's Brian Tuohy and I, the author of The Fix Is In, talking about Super Bowl XVII. Right now, I'm really happy to bring back onto the show for the second time author of The Fix Is In, Brian Tuohy, and Brian and I are going to break down the Super Bowl, which occurred about a week ago now. Seems in some ways a lot longer ago, but as a 49er fan, maybe not long enough. How's it going, Brian?
Fine. How are you doing today?
I'm good. So the reason why I wanted to bring you back on is obviously the last time we talked at length around the sort of the manufactured reality of professional sports. And we just witnessed the Super Bowl, which I think actually brings up more questions in a lot of ways than answers around what you've written about extensively and what many people are beginning to perceive as entertainment along the lines of WWE versus old school NFL style gridiron action. So let's jump into this. And I just want to get kind of your 40,000-foot view of what you saw during the Super Bowl.
That's a good question. What did anybody see during that Super Bowl?
Yeah.
It's really weird because, I've been doing this. I've been running my website since 2006 and investigating professional sports and whether it's, manipulated or, like you say, manufactured as entertainment as opposed to really sport. And I don't think I've had more emails surrounding a game than I did this past Super Bowl. I just could not stop getting emails sent to me like, what'd you think about the game? What happened? What's going on? I've never visited your site before, but I thought something was suspicious with the Super Bowl, so now I visited, and now I really think something's up. So, the nice thing, like you said, is I think it's brought it to the forefront. It's brought it to a lot of people's mind that something just wasn't right. And you look at the game. Well, first of all, you look up at who wound up playing. That you had this, magical matchup with the two Harbaugh brothers, which was something they hyped all week. You had, Ray Lewis and his, swan song, and why they bothered to hype that, I don't know, but he was a big player in terms of manufacturing what the game was all about. And then you had the game itself, which was completely lopsided up until the blackout. And then after that blackout, which got everybody talking, after that blackout, everything changed. And completely on a dime. And like I say, it's what made a lot of people suspicious about the game.
Yeah, there are levels here. Okay, obviously, if we go back in time, let's go back to August of, I believe, it might have been 2011 or 2012. I think it was 2011, and there was a guy that trademarked Harbaugh.
Yeah,
and
he did it after the 2011 season.
Right, after the 2000, and the league went after him in a very big way.
Yeah.
And there are some people that speculate that, and this is kind of a leap, that the league made a big deal out of it because they knew at some point that this was going to happen. It happened sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah, that's a really huge coincidence. I mean, now granted, the guy got the idea because both the Ravens and the 49ers were in the championship games at the end of 2011, and it could have very well been in the Super Bowl and the last Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And now, yeah, this guy trademarks hardball, which I don't think the NFL owns the word har, and they don't own the word bowl, so I don't know how they own the word hardball, but they put their pressure on this guy who was, pretty creative and a genius and went out of his way to tried to trademark this, and then shut him down. And then, yeah, again, as coincidence would have it, if you believe in coincidence, that's exactly what we got in this year's Super Bowl.
Yeah. So we fast forward and we get into the game, and the first thing, the line was what at game time? Was it 4.5 still, or did it come down?
I saw everywhere from 3.5, 4, maybe even 4.5, but somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. So they were trying to encourage money on the Ravens side. And leading up to the game, all we heard for 2 weeks straight, in fact, it really picked up in the final week, were Ravens team of destiny, Ravens team of destiny, Ravens team of destiny. And then we had the Ray Lewis drama, the Ray Lewis saga, getting played out over and over and over again. And you had some bumpy turbulence going into the final week, the week where teams give their interviews, and of course the Chris Culliver scandal, and if it was a scandal. And then the game starts, and the first thing that happens is there's a penalty on the 49ers negating a 20-yard throw to Vernon Davis. And the penalty, apparently what happened was that Michael Crabtree even asked the referee if he was in the right spot. And the referee said yes, and then he threw a flag. Now this sets the tone for the game, and then the first half kind of unfolds like a nightmare for the 49ers. And then we have this, like as you said, this strange blackout. Do you think that it was, at least in the first half, somewhat obvious that there was a slight favoritism towards the Ravens? Because if you look at the splits on the penalties, the Ravens, I think they only had one penalty against them the whole game. Two. And the Niners had more, but
like 5 or 6, I think.
And in key situations. So At what point during the game did you say to yourself, hey, something's not right here, I'm not sure what it is, but there are things that are slightly amiss?
Well, in all honesty, in watching the first half, I almost kind of thought it was a fairly legitimate game. I mean, it seemed really one-sided that, the Ravens were just taking it to the 49ers, and I was kind of surprised because I never thought in a million years that the NFL would allow a lopsided Super Bowl to occur because of all the advertising money and TV money involved in that game. And that's why when the blackout happened and what happened afterward, that's what really heightened my suspicions. But you're right, if you go back and you look at the penalties, like you said, there was only 2 penalties against the Ravens the whole game. There wasn't an offensive holding penalty against either team in the entire game. There was only 1 pass interference penalty in the entire game, and that it was on that Culliver for the 49ers, who was the one, the whole controversy was, like you said, was around him making those anti-gay remarks. And you just really have to wonder what the officials were looking at, because even the very last play of the punt that went for a safety, you could clearly see guys holding. I mean, blatantly holding, 5 feet from the referees and not a flag being thrown. And even go back, you go down to the goal line stand by the Ravens when the 49ers were right there to go ahead. And when Jim Harbaugh flipped out over the non-holding call on the 4th down pass play, I mean, there was calls that definitely could have made that weren't being made. And the scary part was you had guys like Phil Simms announcing the game saying, oh, that's a good non-call. Well, how can you call it a non-call? Obviously, you see it's a penalty. So how is it a good not call on a penalty? If it's a penalty, it's a penalty. There's no arguing the fact it's a penalty. You have to throw the flag. Otherwise, as I've argued before, the NFL rule book is mute.
Right.
It just doesn't matter.
Well, Phil Simms has never been known for his deep insight into any game, but that one was revealing in the sense that he was showing us something and telling us something that was really kind of contrary to, what the rules stated, and in a weird way, to me it mirrored at times our own governmental process. Like, well, this guy broke a rule, but just because he broke a rule, we're not going to prosecute him. It's a good non-prosecution.
It's a lot. It's like, it's funny. Our government almost in a lot of ways is like the NFL.
Yeah.
Where it just begins. It legislates the really minutia things, and that's what like the NFL is doing with the helmet-to-helmet contact and that sort of thing. Where it wasn't a problem for 80 years of NFL history, and now suddenly a couple of guys are suing. Well, actually, 1,500 ex-players are suing the NFL over repetitive head injuries, and suddenly, we have to worry about player safety. So we got to start legislating it and try to get it out of the game that way. And it's not going to happen. In fact, there was a couple of helmet-to-helmet hits in the Super Bowl that should have been flagged. There was one I know on Crabtree that should have been flagged, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it was the third down play, the option sprint right, and he got hit on the helmet.
Yeah.
And, of course, so people say, well, no, he got hit on the face mask. Well, isn't the face mask part of the helmet?
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's the thing that bothers me with the NFL, and it bothers me with a lot of sports, is this inconsistency in officiating. And you can't question the officials after the game. No, there's no media access to these guys. If a player or coach argues about calls, which I'm surprised, Harbaugh brought up how bad the officiating was at the end of the game, and he didn't get fined for it that I'm aware of, and that's a normal occurrence that if you talk bad about the officials, you get fined. So they're not held accountable to anyone but the league. And yet perhaps it's the league that's saying, hey, don't throw a holding flag. Hey, don't throw these pass interference flags. Don't do this, don't do that, but call these penalties. And to me, it makes the whole thing very suspect.
Well, that brings up the whole subject of Jerome Boger and being inserted into that game as the lead referee. Now, was that his team? Was that his crew that he normally refs with?
No.
Okay.
What happens is, I believe crews are assigned like in the first two rounds of the playoffs, but I think in the championship game, and I know in the Super Bowl, it's basically like supposedly an all-star crew. It's not a crew that work together, but a crew of it's supposed to be the best of the best. But in Boger's case, we know that wasn't the case.
Why do you think that happened?
I've heard rumors. I've heard that obviously it's a lot of a political thing. I've heard that the NFL did it intentionally because he's black. I've heard rumors that he's actually, and again, this is rumors, I'm not saying this. I've heard rumors that he's actually homosexual and that they put him out there for that reason, for some sort of future, plan that the NFL has. But I don't know.
So you've heard rumors that Jerome Boger is gay?
That's what I've heard. I've heard a couple people emailed me this. I don't know if it's true.
Interesting.
It's speculation. Because, like I say, there's no good reason he should have been chosen. So there had to be an ulterior motive. Maybe the ulterior motive was he would do what the NFL said and was all cool with them, staging a blackout. I don't know.
So you had emails come from separate people telling you about this?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And one is a gambler in Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah. And those guys I tend to trust because, and I have a few gamblers that contact me back and forth, and these guys are more right than wrong, and it's because they spend, which a lot of people don't realize, professional sports gamblers literally work 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. I mean, they don't just, wander into the sports book and go, whatever, the Ravens look good today, I think I'll bet them. They do a lot of homework, and they know what's going on with players, with coaches, and with officials. So,
well, it's interesting because if they wanted to make a choice or a statement based on ethnicity, they could have chosen Mike Carey, who's actually a much better referee than Jerome Boger.
And I think didn't he officiate a Super Bowl before Carey?
Yeah, he did. He did officiate. Yeah. Interesting stuff. On the gay topic, since we're talking about it, have you heard rumors about Ray Lewis as well?
About him being gay?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
That's what I never heard. But here's the interesting thing, and this is one thing that a lot of people don't think about, is, there is no, that I'm aware of, openly homosexual player in any professional sport.
It's true.
And it's a really good way somebody wanted to manipulate a player or even coach or referee into doing their bidding, it's a good way to blackmail them.
Yeah.
Because obviously we saw with Culver's response being asked the question, how he was like, there's no way we could have such a guy in this locker room, et cetera, et cetera. It'd be very easy to get compromising pictures of a player, especially in this day and age, and say, look, do you want these to be public, or perhaps do you want to do us a little service? Do you want us, to out you as a homosexual athlete and perhaps destroy and end your career because of potential backlash, or do you want to maybe throw a game for us?
Right. Well, I have talked to somebody who is kind of has some interesting connections in sort of the underground world of information, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but there have been whispers that Ray Lewis plays inside and outside linebacker, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, like you say, there's got to be someone out there.
Yeah.
There has to be athletes. There has to be. Supposedly, what is it, like 10% of the population? Supposedly.
Well, the numbers would suggest that it would be certainly a portion of the league. Let's talk about the penalty or the non-penalty where Kerry Williams pushed the referee, blatantly pushed the referee. There was no flag. Well, there was a flag, but it was offsetting penalties. There was no ejection. In the aftermath of the game, no fine from the NFL. How does this factor into the overall tenor of the game? It seemed like Boger and his crew were actually kind of courting chaos at that point.
Yeah, I don't understand how, at least like you say, at least it didn't draw a flag. Okay, maybe if you don't want to eject the guy from the Super Bowl, fine. I can kind of understand that. But for like you say, no flag, no fine after the game, no nothing. I don't even think the NFL made a statement regarding that incident. It just boggles my mind. Like I say, I don't understand how Jim Harbaugh hasn't been fined for his post-game comments regarding the officiating in the game.
Right.
Normally during the regular season draws a fine for anybody. Doesn't matter. But somehow he gets a free pass. And the interesting thing is the last time we had this much, I think, controversy over officiating in the Super Bowl, it was when the Steelers played the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. And the same thing happened. Mike Holmgren, who's the coach of the Seahawks, just blasted the officials, basically said the officials gave the game to the Steelers, and he didn't get fined because the commissioner at the time, which was Tagliabue, basically said, I heard what he said, but I'm going to just give him a free pass on this one.
Yeah, I almost stopped watching football after that Super Bowl.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, got put off on it because it looks blatantly rigged.
And that, by the way, was the farewell game for Jerome Bettis, just like this was the farewell game for Ray Lewis. So it seems like the NFL has a soft spot in its heart for players that are saying farewell. Let's fast forward to the blackout. Very unusual event, which took place half the stadium in light and half the stadium in dark. Symbolically interesting, at least. And then we have the kickoff return on the back end of that. Before it was the kickoff return. That's right, and then the blackout. The kickoff return. If you look at clips, stills, there is blatant holding and tackling of the 49er players on that kickoff return, and to me, it boggles my mind. It's like, well, did somebody say to the Ravens at halftime, just hold and clutch and grab on the kickoff return? Do whatever you want. Nothing's going to get called. It was bizarre. And then the even more bizarre part is that blackout. And then, of course, it seems as though everything that went wrong for the 49ers went right. The game is extended. Now we have a football game. It's longer. More people get to see more commercials. What's your take on this sequence of the game?
Well, the kickoff, I don't know. I know what you're saying with the hold and stuff. That was clearly there should have been a flag thrown somewhere at some point in time on that return. But yeah, the blackout. That's why one of my first thoughts with the blackout was I thought Anonymous was behind it for some reason. Mm-hmm. I thought it was like some sort of terrorist act. And the thing that, the more I thought about it afterwards, was no one panicked with that blackout.
Right.
And that to me is strange because they had no idea what was going on. Apparently, and the announcers didn't know. I know that for a fact. And according to Chris Christie, who I think was on David Letterman, said that he was in the box with Commissioner Roger Goodell, he said never even got up, didn't even look worried about the whole incident. And yet this is their crown jewel of their season. And like I say, nobody on the field seemed panicked, which is probably a good thing. But at the same time, when you have no idea what's happening, wouldn't there be a little panic in there somewhere?
Well, John Harbaugh was freaking out. I saw him barking at a Superdome official, and he was not panicking, but he was leveling this guy.
Well, and maybe because he learned something that really pissed him off. I don't know. But I mean, it's kind of bizarre that we, now that we supposedly have an answer for it, that they installed something that was supposed to make sure that this didn't happen, but that completely failed and it did happen. It still makes me suspicious because the NFL does have the power to cover this up if it wanted to. I mean, it'd be very easy to create this story to get someone to admit to doing what they did to make this a different aspect from what it really was. I mean, I really think the NFL, in a sense, might have been behind it, and they have the power to cover that up because the sports media believes whatever the NFL tells them for the most part. So it'd be a very easy story for them to spin off onto something else, and everybody go, oh, okay, that's the reason, fine, whatever. Super Bowl is a week old. We don't really care anymore.
It was interesting. Every now and then when they would cut away to the executive suite and would show Goodell, he seemed very detached and at times even disinterested in the game itself.
Yeah.
Did you notice that with his body language?
Yeah, he did. Well, he said even, again, to go back to Chris Christie saying he was in the box with Goodell when the blackout happened. He said he didn't even get out of his chair. I mean, myself, I think I would have been up and on the move trying to find out what the heck was going on. If I was basically the man supposedly in charge of the entire league, I would be a little more concerned than that.
Now, they have capacity crowds quite often in that Superdome. The Saints are a very, very popular team, and they've had them there during NFC Championship games and playoff games when they have hosted them. So they've had pull on those generators and transformers before, and apparently there were 4 backup systems. 4 backup systems. How does this happen with 4 backup systems failing?
It's a good question. I mean, you look at, basically you can look at the history of professional sports, and you have a very hard time finding the time when this happened, when a blackout occurred because of some sort of failure. I mean, you had the one in San Francisco, was it a year or 2 ago, a Monday night, where they showed from the blimp view the transformer explode.
That's right. You could actually see it overload. Yeah.
So, okay, fine. That that was obviously a problem. And then there was another famous one where it was a University of Wisconsin versus UNLV football game where the power went out, which actually negated the game, much to the joy of Las Vegas because they had a lot of people from Wisconsin there who were betting heavily on the game, and Wisconsin was covering very handily. And suddenly the power went out, and they couldn't restore it, and the game was canceled. It was never completed, and everybody got their money refunded, which saved Vegas a few bucks. But other than that, you point to another power outage like this. How does it happen on, like you say, the biggest stage the NFL has with millions upon millions of people watching? How does that happen?
So then we come out of that, and then the 49ers, they make a game of it. It's looking like one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history. And then it comes down to the final 4 plays of the game, where things begin to get a little sketchy and hazy. Now, that's
exactly what the NFL wanted, too, though. Yeah, that's what wants in, every game, and it happened a lot during the season where it literally came down to, under the 2-minute warning or the very last play of the game, if not overtime, because obviously that keeps people in the seats, it keeps people watching, seeing the commercials, and keeps the ratings high, and that's exactly what the NFL wanted, and they weren't getting that before the power outage.
When was the last time there was an actual blowout in the Super Bowl?
I think the last one you could probably point to, which was interesting, is the Buccaneers-Raiders Super Bowl. In that game, of course, we had the controversy before this game where Tim Brown and Jerry Rice came out and kind of publicly said that their coach threw the game.
That's a very, it was a really interesting run-up to the Super Bowl where they were accusing Callahan of changing the game plan on the final day, which is absolutely insane. And when he went out and made the statement, Tim Brown was shouted down. But then he had about 2 or 3 other players back him up on that. Charlie Garner was another player. Said, "Yeah, this is what happened." And it was. But since then, we've had no blowouts. Everything has been close since then.
Yeah. Buccaneers-Raiders game, there was another book written by this guy named Mike Freeman called Bloody Sundays, and he revealed in that book that Gruden, who had been the coach for the Raiders the year before and then went to Tampa Bay, was still in telephone contact with the Raiders quarterback, Rich Gannon, the week of the Super Bowl, and Gannon was basically telling Gruden that, oh, yeah, we haven't changed the offense since you left. We haven't even changed the audibles. And so in the game, the Buccaneers knew exactly what play the Raiders were running before they ran it. I mean, you can hear, if you watch some of the old films on it, some of the guys, like I think John Lynch, the safety for the Buccaneers, was mic'd up for the game. He's literally calling the play as Rich Gannon's calling the play.
Right.
So what do you think was going to happen to that game? I mean, something was obviously amiss there.
Well, the result was
it's clear, yeah.
I think
they won by 20-some-odd points.
No, it was not. Gannon was intercepted, what was it?
5 times.
5 times.
That's a Super Bowl record.
Yeah. So I'll share with you a little gossip that I heard about that game. What prompted Barrett Robbins, this is what I've heard, cannot be confirmed, but this is what I've heard. What prompted Barrett Robbins to go nuts was he went back to his hotel room and he found Terry Kirby, who was a running back for the Raiders at the time, in the sack with his wife.
That would make that happen, I'm sure. Yeah.
And he flipped out. That was the reason. People don't talk about it, but that was one of the reasons why. The reason why he went south of the border, literally and figuratively. So let's go down to the next the last 2 plays of the game. There's actually 3 plays. There's the hit to the head, sprint option right on Crabtree, not called, and then there's the holding call or non-holding call or the non-call. And there are people that said, well, there's no way that Crabtree could have caught that ball. If you go back and watch the catch with Dwight Clark and Joe Montana, Clark extended way beyond his normal reach and made an incredible catch. And now, had he been held, the ball would have been high, and people could have said, hey, he would never have caught that ball. We don't know if Crabtree would have caught it or not because of what was taking place on that final play. And apparently, the same referee that made the non-call was the referee that did not give Kerry Williams the flag. What's your take on that last play?
Well, I'm sure he could have caught that ball if he was unimpeded. I mean, that was actually a very well thrown ball by Kaepernick. The whole thing was he was held, so we'll never know. That's what it boils down to. He was held. We'll never know if he could have caught the ball or not because he didn't have the chance to, and the official who was looking right at it didn't want to throw the flag. Yeah.
Do you have any numbers on the game in terms of betting and money changing hands in Vegas?
Supposedly, this was the most bet upon game, I think, in Vegas history.
Wow.
But I mean, in a very real way, that doesn't matter too much because Vegas, historically, is really only about 1% to 2% of all the money wagered on professional sports in the United States of America. Most of it's done illegally. So how much was really wagered on the game, nobody could ever say or know.
Right.
That's the thing, is if the gamblers want to fix a game, for example, you don't do it through Las Vegas. You just don't, because any bet over $10,000, they take an ID, they take a social security number, they know who you are, and sometimes they won't even let you bet that much even if they know who you are. And what you're going to do is you're going to bet into the vast, untold billions of dollars wagered out there within the realm of organized crime, and no one's going to see it because it's completely unmonitored.
Right. So the safety at the end really didn't matter much in terms of the overall point spread. Would it have mattered to the over and under in the game? Did that safety play into anything at that point?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think so. I think it was already established as being over at that point.
Right. Their game had hit the
number, yeah.
Hit the over. Well, that's another interesting aspect of the game is the over/under, right?
Yeah, I mean, but total betting usually isn't as big as the sides.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, they don't allow as much money bet on the totals, and normally it's not as interested for the bettors as the actual sides who wins or loses.
Right. So now we go into the off season with the cloud. There's a cloud over the Super Bowl, and there are people that like to take the tack. Well, these things happen. One team played poorly. One team played better. Both got good calls and bad calls. You shake hands. End of the game. That's the way it is. And in your estimation, that's really not the way it is with Super Bowl XVII.
No, I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know what the NFL was doing. I don't know what they were up to. I don't know. Maybe this is part of their plan. I don't know. It's like I say, I think it really does keep a cloud over the game. I think in a very good way. I think it woke up a lot of fans that said, hey, this stuff just might not be what they purport it to be. And to me, that's a good thing, because I think fans should question what's going on in these sports. Because, again, you see corruption everywhere you look in this country, be it government, be it business, what have you, and yet sports are supposedly clean. I don't buy it.
Right.
They got as much to win or lose on some of these results as anybody, as any gambler may. And I think they forced some of these results into being.
One final piece before we say goodbye. That play, I keep going back to that one play with Kerry Williams where he goes nuts. And the thing that popped into my brain was, this is the behavior of somebody that is hopped up on some kind of amphetamine. This was kind of a speedy behavior. And I thought to myself, well, it's the final game of the season. If I'm a player, I'm using everything in my toolkit in order to win this one game. What kind of drug testing goes down in the Super Bowl? And does the NFL really care at that point?
I don't believe they do any testing before the Super Bowl that I'm aware of.
Right.
I know they can do testing during the postseason, but whether they do any, I mean, that was the big thing with the Ray Lewis Antler story, was they said even if they had tested them immediately after that story came out, they wouldn't have had the results back before the game was played, so it would have been moot. So I can't imagine that they do any sort of testing. So, yeah, you're right. If on come game day people want to gulp amphetamines or shoot themselves up with whatever it is they think will help, they're free to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brian, I know you've got to run. Thanks for your time, and thanks for all your efforts trying to enlighten and make people aware of these discrepancies in our national pastimes.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Brian Tuohy, author of The Fix Is In. Where can they find your book and your website, Brian?
The website is thefixesin.net, and the book's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever good books are sold, it should be there.
All right. Thanks again. See you.
Thanks.
All right. That was Brian Tuohy. Thanks again for Brian to come on the show earlier today and grab that interview with him. And it's interesting to look at a number of different angles for the Super Bowl. And that last angle, we were just trying to wrap our heads around what the hell the NFL was doing with that game. Because there seemed to be, certainly at some level, a form of collusion to at least simulate a particular outcome. And it's unfortunate that at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, we're still, at least most people outside of Raven Nation, are trying to understand, just exactly what is a holding penalty, right? How does that all come out in the wash? So it's a taint as far as I'm concerned on the Super Bowl, and I also think that it leads to people becoming less invested in our institutions, that there's less trust involved, especially at the NFL level. And if we're talking about games being fixed or outcomes being tweaked because there's an agenda, well, it's one of those things that spills over into people's lives. And they have a hard time at that point making sense of things. The NFL, pro sports, theoretically has been a place where things are more black and white. There are rules. There are repercussions for breaking the rules. And in society, we see that there are less repercussions for breaking rules. So sports has been traditionally that one place where two people pit themselves against one another. There are rules of engagement. They're broken. Penalties are assessed, and then order is restored. That's no longer the case. That's my take on this. And it's about the erosion of institutions as it's related to sports. There's also a New World Order factor that comes into play, that in order to have a one world government, you have to be able to dismantle the institutions that are related to a country. So, for instance, the United States, it would be our sports, particularly football, which is a very American sport. And we even had Obama during Super Bowl, the prep and the wind-up for the Super Bowl press week, come out and say, hey, if I had a son, I don't think he'd be playing football. So this gives you some insight as to where all of this might actually be headed. Okay, so there are other levels of the Super Bowl and what happened. And some of those levels, well, a lot of those levels are esoteric and symbolic. And that over the last decade, the Super Bowl itself has become a ritual affair. It's a ritual affair in that everybody gets together. It is the pagan holiday, the Roman holiday, the unofficial holiday of the United States. So on one level, there is a ritualistic observance of the Super Bowl, and on another level, there is an arcane and esoteric observance of the Super Bowl. Last year, I had SiStar MyRah on, and she really exquisitely broke down the Super Bowl where the Green Bay Packers were playing. And also she totally broke down the halftime ritual with Madonna at Lucas Field in Indianapolis where the Patriots lost to the New York Giants. So I thought it'd be great to bring her back on again and have a look at Super Bowl XVLII and talk about some of the symbols that were involved, the images that were involved, and the occult or arcane overtones that ran through Super Bowl 47. So let's bring her on right now, the wonderful SiStar MyRah.
Greetings, Robert. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. And there is a whole lot of symbolism that went on in the Super Bowl that I was able to observe. And as you expressed, I do look at this from a symbolic perspective, you see. So it is going to be all about symbolism. I've been doing this symbolic symbolism of the Super Bowl ever since the Super Bowl in New Orleans right after 9/11 when we had the Rams against the Patriarchs. And the thing is that each Super Bowl, they're all it's a succession because you can tie the Super Bowls together as far as the overall message that you're looking at. And this one here was very big. My thing is, I call this the Super Bowl of mother and son.
Mm-hmm.
The symbolism of mother and son, and it wasn't really meant to be a competition. It was meant to be the mother now releasing the son.
Mm-hmm.
Mother is another word for smother.
Mm-hmm.
The mother is the water element, where the sun is the fire element.
Right.
Too much water puts out the fire. So this was a ritual to indicate that the mother is now releasing the power of the sun. And how I get this message, okay, the very first symbolism we want to look at is, of course, the ravens.
Mm-hmm.
The ravens, I have what you call the medicine card book.
Sure.
It's like a Native American definition of symbols.
Right.
So
Jamie
I
is the author of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I did was I went and looked up the symbolism for the ravens. Now, by the way, I was in Baltimore. I did my last lecture in Baltimore about 3 years ago, and I told them this was going to happen. I told them to watch out for the ravens
Mm-hmm.
making an impact. Based on what I was getting symbolically.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I read the raven symbolism, the first thing they say about the raven is magic. Okay? The raven is the guardian of ceremonial magic and in absentia healing. In any healing circle, the raven is present. Raven guides the magic of healing and the change in consciousness. This will bring about a new reality and dispel disease or illness. Raven brings in a new state of wellness from the void of great mystery. I call the great mystery Big Mama, Mama Universe, who is the most hidden. This is why she is the negative pole. She is actually the most hidden, where the positive pole is the most visible. Mm-hmm. So energy actually unfolds, and that's what I do. I study energy. Energy actually unfolds symbolically from mama to son, and then from father to daughter. Mm-hmm. Mama is the water element, son is the fire element, father is the air element, and daughter is the earth element. You see, there you have the full royal family of elements in energy. So this void or great mystery and the field of plenty. Raven is the messenger that carries all energy flows of ceremonial magic between the ceremony itself and the intended destination. For instance, if a ceremony is being performed to send energy to a disaster area where people need courage and strength, Raven would be the courier of that energy flow. The intention would be to allow the people of the devastated area to feel the concern and support of the participants in the ceremony, which brought to my mind the Katrina catastrophe, where there was a lot of deaths in that Superdome during Katrina. Mm-hmm. And I want to acknowledge that because I feel like that also played a part in the energy we saw in this Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. For Raven, magic is in the air. Do not try to figure it out. You cannot. It is the power of the unknown at work, and something special is about to happen. The deeper mystery, however, is how you respond to the sparkling synchronicity of the alchemical moment. Will you limit the power of the great mystery by explaining it away? It may be time to call a raven as a courier to carry an intention, some healing energy, a thought, or a message. Raven is the patron of smoke signals or spirit messages, represented by smoke. If you want to send a message to the blue roll of spirit in order to contact the ancients, call Raven, or who knows, the ancients may be calling to you. Remember, this magic moment came from the void of darkness, and the challenge is to bring it to light. In doing so, you have honored the magician within. Okay, so that's the symbolic understanding of the ravens. Now we want to look at the symbolic understanding of the 49ers. So I did look up on the internet the symbolism of the 49ers. And this is why I say mama and son, or mother and son, because when you look at the symbolism of the 49ers, you get the Saint Mother of God, Blessed Virgin of Virgins, Mother of the Christ, Mother of the Divine Grace, Mother very pure, Mother very chaste, Mother always virgin, Mother without stain, Mother pleasant, Mother admirable, Mother of the good counsel, Mother of the Creator, Mother of the Savior. You see, Queen of angels, Queen of patriarchs, Queen of prophets, Queen of apostles, Queen of martyrs, Queen of confessors, Queen of virgins, Queen of all saints, Queen conceived without the original spot. So we're looking at the Mama universe, you see. So the sun, and then I have a book called Horoscopes of the Western Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. And I looked up the date for the ravens, and they were actually founded on August 10th. So that makes them Leo energy, the sun. Mm-hmm. And then looked up the date for the 49ers, June 27th, which puts them in Cancer, the mama.
Right.
So reiterating. And then, of course, when you add up the number 49, you get 13.
13, which is death.
Which is the lunar cycle.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're looking at mother and son in this Super Bowl.
Interesting.
And now, I do come from, the angle of, the black race.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Okay? Now, when we talk about the Willie Lynch, the first thing that happened was the father was cut off. The father was supposed to be the protector of the family.
Right. And
when he was cut off, then the mother smothered the fire or the power of the son to keep him a little boy so he would not grow into the father and be killed also.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
Keeping him in his ego, giving him an illusion of power, stroking him through the ego and manipulating him that way. So this ritual was symbolic. It had to be done this way because it was symbolic of the mama or the mother now releasing the son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You know, releasing him, no longer smothering him, giving him, stepping back, the negative pole, pulling back so that the positive pole or the fire could expand. It could ignite, you see.
Yeah.
Ignite his passion. So mother and son. And actually, when you saw the blackout,
yeah,
that was actually the mama showing herself, because she is the hidden, she is the occult, she is the internal, she is the one that it's all about energy cycles. Everything started from matriarch, then it crossed over to the patriarchal reign, and now it's come back full circle, complete back to the mama.
Yeah.
Which is, the fulfillment. It's time for fulfillment. So now she has to step back and let the son. That's how she exposes who she is in her hidden magic. First two letters of magic is Ma, Mama Magic.
Right.
This was purely a magical Super Bowl. Okay, the ravens, which indicate magic, the sun, Leo, and Mama, the magical energy that comes from the universe, Mama Magic. And she is the hidden, she is the moon. You know, Cancer is the moon.
Yeah.
Leo is the sun. So we had the moon and the sun. Mm-hmm. And when you had the darkness, when you had the stadium go dark, it went completely dark.
Yeah.
To me, that was Big Mama taking down artificial power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then she lit up the raven side, the sun, exposing the hidden. So we had the night and day.
Yeah, it was definitely half and half light, half dark, duality.
Half dark, half light, absolutely. Yeah. And it's no coincidence that the 49ers half, which represents the mama, was the dark or the hidden. Mm-hmm. And the Ravens half, which was the sun or exposure, was the one that was lit up.
Right.
Okay? That's not coincidental, you see.
Yeah.
So the mama and son, and her empowering the son, now releasing him, not smothering him, but allowing his power to expand. Fire is power. Mm-hmm. So allowing his power to expand. So this is why it had to be demonstrated that way, to show the symbolism of her now releasing the sun so he can expand in his power. And Ray Lewis actually represented the individual vessel of the resurrected son. Mm-hmm. And even you see it in his name, Ray, Sun Ray, or Ra.
Right.
You see. None of this is coincidental. It's all symbolic, you see. And he actually did rise, and then fell. And now this is about his resurrection.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I did a chart before the game.
Yes.
And at that time, at game time, the ascendant for the game was Leo. Leo was on the ascendant at game time. So the sun was on the ascendant based on, and this dovetails with what you're talking about. And Taurus was on the midheaven. So this is where Ray Lewis's sun was at game time, was at the midheaven. And then by the end of the game, the sun had moved on. It had moved into the 12th house by that time. It was on a journey.
Wow.
And the ascendant was Virgo. But what was also really interesting, Sister MyRah, was I looked at where the fixed stars were at game time. Yes. And Polaris was right over the city of New Orleans. And Polaris is the pole star. Yes. And what's fascinating is that if you look at the precession of the equinoxes, the original pole star was a star called Thuban, Thuban. And Thuban was in the constellation Draco. And Thuban was actually a star that was used in setting and building, like the Great Pyramid at Khufu.
Yes.
They built that so that Thuban would rise as the pole star. And at that time, Thuban was on the ascendant. And what's interesting about Thuban is that Thuban actually represents speculators and miners. So I thought at that point, which was kind of, at least I thought it was interesting, that here we have this fixed star, but that represented, people that made money from coin, essentially, 49ers. So I thought that this was interesting that Thuban was on the ascendant, and that by the end of the game, Thuban had moved into the 12th house, and Polaris was past it, and we were then in Virgo, and then Michael Crabtree at Virgo was a very prominent member, or a very prominent performer or player at the game's end. So that corresponded with the Virgo ascendant. I wanted to ask you a question about the halftime show. There are two things that came out of the halftime show that I thought were quite interesting, and I touched a little bit on it with Brian. Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, really didn't seem to care that the power was out.
Yeah.
He didn't care. The other person that really didn't seem to care was Beyonce, because they told her that the power's out, and she almost acted like she knew it was going to go out. Have you gotten into any of this at all?
I hadn't. I didn't know that her response. I know she was trying to say that she wasn't responsible for that. That's about as much as I heard, when it came to her response to it. Because, she had just done the halftime show. Matter of fact, I did some calculations, and they had only played that halftime when it went out. When the lights went down, it was actually 12. The halftime is like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
There was 13 minutes and 22 seconds still showing on the clock when it went down, at the time that it went down, which adds up to 8.
Right.
And which means that they had actually only played for 2 minutes and 18 seconds. You had the kickoff return.
Yes.
And then, so the lights actually stayed up for 2 minutes and 18 seconds after we started the third quarter.
Right.
And then that adds up to 11 when you add up 218. So. Right. And another interesting thing about that is that you're saying it stayed out for 34 minutes. Well, I made the connection when I was on the show the last time, when I went to Baltimore to tell them about the Ravens making a significant impact soon. It was because I was looking at the Steelers. I told you and I explained the last time I was on the show how she passed the baton, to her man, and the next year we had the, Prince on the stage indicating the resurrection. From Gemini to Sagittarius, resurrecting from the individual prince to the collective empowerment of a Sar, which is Sagittarius energy, which is the opposite energy of Gemini. So the individual versus the collective.
Right.
That's what that was all about. So Pittsburgh, the Steelers, the EL denotes royalty. The Steelers are in the same division as the Ravens.
Right.
They're like brother and sister, royal daughter and royal brother, royal son and royal daughter. And I got this because when I did go to Baltimore, they explained to me that Baltimore used to was called the Circle of Baal, B-A-A-L. Well, when I did further research into that, Baal was actually, it's spelled B-A-E-L, like the Steelers, S-T-E-E-L. The E-L is a title of divinity. So he was supposed to be the higher royal son, coming from the highest mama or mother, and he fell to the lowest position.
Yeah.
And then has to be resurrected again, you see. So brother and sister. So now, what was interesting about the blackout is that last year, when the Steelers played the 49ers in Candlestick Park,
They had a blackout.
the lights went out.
That's right.
20 minutes one time, 14 minutes the second time, which adds up to 34. So do you think it's a coincidence that the common denominator of the 49ers and the lights go off both on the Steelers 34 minutes as well as on the Ravens for 34 minutes?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
I don't believe that's a coincidence at all, you see. So it's all about, and here I want to give you some other information. This is from the Celestial Ship of the North, E. Valentian Straighton, and it talks about the sons of God were offsprings of a mother, and the ancient world overflows with memories and symbols of these sons or celestial messengers who are called the Messiahs, emanations from the Holy Spirit of God. The Messiahs were all incarnations of the Son. They were all concealed, buried, and arose from the dead, thereby typifying the setting and the rising of the sun. So just like you were saying, the rising and the midheaven, you see.
Yeah.
So this was all about the resurrection of the sun. Now, through the power of the mama, the hidden power of the mama. And there's some material that I got from, it's like Kabbalic information. And in the Kabbalic information, it talks about the father, the mother, and the son all prepared to raise the fallen daughter. The mother, the father, and the son once more symbolically unite with the daughter, raising the fallen daughter, the animal, soul, or matter, to the throne of the mother, where the earthly component, the daughter, is redeemed by her marriage with the son and is thereby set up on the throne of the mother, you see. So I'm bringing this up because the Steelers represents that daughter. And when they were in the Super Bowl, like you mentioned with the Packers, you know, we were talking about she's supposed to be daughter character. Daughter character versus degradation, and degradation won. And this is the fallen daughter, you see. So she is the fallen daughter that has to be redeemed and raised up by the mother, the son, and the father. Now, the father, to me, was last year the Giants winning the Super Bowl because the quarterback for the Giants was E.L. Manning.
Eli, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Eli Manning. So we're going back to that royal title, that royal father. You see that, so the father did his part, which means that he was the spiritual father, ancient father, was coming in from the farthest reaches of the universe, coming through the sun in order to resurrect him. You know, so we got a lot of solar flares this year.
Right.
To me, was symbolic of the Father's spirit coming through the sun to resurrect the son, but then the son had to be released by the mama. So here we got the father, the son, the mama, all combining to raise the fallen daughter, which is daughter character, the spirit of character. See? And because I think the Steelers have been laying down ever since that that game with the Packers. I didn't even think the Steelers showed up with that Super Bowl with the Packers.
Yeah, well,
and they have been falling ever since.
Yeah, they've been certainly been challenged, and in fact, their quarterback was accused of rape, and also suffered a pretty significant injury. I want to give you some feedback here, just some positive feedback. I don't know whether you know it or not, but there's a site called astromark.us. That's astromark.us. Anybody can go there, and you can look up what a particular state or what a particular city is astrologically.
Yes.
And on this site, they list Baltimore as a Leo, that their sun sign Baltimore is Leo.
Yes.
Which dovetails exactly with what you're talking about. And it here has a Gemini moon for Baltimore. Now, San Francisco is listed here as an Aries with a Gemini moon, but I've also seen San Francisco listed as a Gemini. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they both have Gemini moons, and what we're dealing here with the two Harbaughs are the brothers, or Gemini, which you can actually see, by the way, in the halftime ritual with Beyonce and the split faces, on both sides of the stage, which were feminine. They were feminine figures, but it represents the split and the duality, which is a big part of the theme of that Super Bowl. And New Orleans itself is an Aquarius city.
Okay.
So my sense here was that there was also a significant statement, and not necessarily in a positive way, about the Aquarian age. And I don't know where you chime in on Beyonce and Destiny's Child and Jay-Z and the whole relationship to the Illuminati and Rockefeller. I tend to have a less than positive view about them.
I do too. I don't have a very positive view about Beyonce at all. And what I saw in the Super Bowl, you were going to see the highest as well as the lowest, representation of this energy. And what I took from it, especially with the lights going off not too long after Beyonce's Super Bowl performance, which I thought was very lackluster. I mean, I've seen many Super Bowl halftimes, and they have all been spectacular, and I saw nothing spectacular about Beyonce's performance. And I think what happened was that it started with her in the inauguration with the lip syncing.
Right.
And so she had to promise to come out and sing live at the Super Bowl, which was her undoing, because you saw the real Beyonce. And that's why it wasn't as spectacular as all the other Super Bowls you see. So I think that Beyonce is on her way down. I think that was a message from Mama in chastisement saying, your power is going down. The power that you have raised yourself up with through the Illuminati is now going down. That's what I took that to mean. Remember the Super Bowl with the Panthers, North Carolina Panthers against the
Patriots. That was the wardrobe malfunction Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See, the patriarchs is the patriotic spirit. It's the system. It represents the system. Mm-hmm. And the patriarch had to take down the full royal family, where they started, like I said, right after 9/11 in New Orleans when they took down the Realms, which represents Haru, you see. And then they took down North Carolina, which represented the matriarch, the royal mama. Mm-hmm. They also took down the Eagles, which represented the royal father. So when they took down the North Carolina, when they went against them, that represented Charlotte, you see, Queen Charlotte, the patriarch against the matriarch. And Janet Jackson represented the matriarch, and Justin Timberlake represented the patriarch.
Right.
And what happened was when he exposed her breast, the breast is, of course, Cancer energy.
Yeah.
Which to me was Mama was chastising her for what she was doing. And I see the same symbolism going on here with Beyonce. Now, you're saying on the site you have San Francisco as a Gemini, but the books that I have, the horoscopes of the Western Hemisphere, they show June 27th, 1776. Mm-hmm. Founded 1 week before the Declaration of Independence was signed. Is what I'm reading here.
So that would be Cancer then, right, for San Francisco?
That would be Cancer.
Right.
That would go back to, yes.
Yeah, San Francisco has different, I've seen different dates associated with San Francisco.
Yes.
And it's one of these tricky cities because it goes through like different kind of incarnations in terms of, it was founded here, it was annexed here.
Yes.
So I think that there's some. I will say this though about San Francisco, and you probably know this, is that it is outside of Turin, Italy, one of the satanic centers of the world. And I mean, it is it's rife with satanic activity. And in fact, what's really interesting, and I hadn't thought about this for a while, Sister MyRah, was that back in the 1990s, I think it was around 1998, there was actually a fundraiser for the stadium initiative that the 49ers are trying to put through, and Eddie DeBartolo was the owner. They were at a fundraiser, and there was actually a satanic ritual that took place at that fundraiser. And after that, the 49ers' misfortunes went downhill rapidly, and Eddie DeBartolo actually met his demise in Louisiana, where he was arrested for corruption and bribery with then Governor Edwin Edwards. So there's an interesting circle here. But I wanted to get back to Destiny's Child and Beyonce. Because there's an interesting meaning around Destiny's Child. I spent some time researching it, and Destiny's Child was actually a reference to the Antichrist. Were you aware of that?
Wow. No, I was not aware of that, but it all makes sense. I mean, it all falls into place to me because Beyonce, I've always called her the Queen Antichrist. Well, Queen of the Antichrist, and I've always called Obama the King of the Antichrist. You see.
Right. Interesting.
They are both, the hybrid. And the thing is that this is why there was that battle going on between Beyonce and Etta James, because at Obama's inauguration, they have Beyonce to come to sing the song At Last, which is what Etta James had made popular. Now, Etta James had a black mother and a white father, where Beyonce has a maternal lineage of white mother and a black father.
Right.
So the song At Last, sung by Etta James, is actually talking about the black woman. Her man is finally coming back to her. Lonely days is over. At last, my man is finally coming home. Right. That's the essence of what that At Last song was meant to accomplish. And so that's why Obama flipped her off and flipped off the original and brought in the perpetrator, Beyonce, to sing that song in the honor of, the hybrid. And that's why the war went down between them two. Now, the interesting thing about it is that Beyonce had a child on January the 9th, Capricorn, and 13 days after that, Etta Jane dies, you see, which I know was a ritual.
And Beyonce played Etta James in Cadillac Records.
Yes. So, but why would you go get someone who played the role rather than the authentic when she was available, you see?
Right.
So this is what she was upset about, but that she didn't understand the symbology of what they were trying to indicate here, going back to the movie Obsession, where, again, the black man married to, there's a white woman on his job that was chasing after him, and at this point he decides to stay true to his wife, his black wife, but of course they infuse Beyonce in there, to circumvent the true meaning behind what that, what the movie was intending to say. And they did the same thing with the At Last scenario.
Right.
So I do believe that, and Beyonce played the role of what's her name, Diana Ross and the Supremes, where she put herself up, where she was not the best talent. It was actually Florence. They said Florence had to stand so many feet away from the microphone. Her voice was so strong, but she didn't have the look, you see. She didn't have the commercial look. So you had Diana Ross, and see, Beyonce did the same thing to Destiny Child, you see. Her father was the manager, and it wasn't about, she didn't have the best talent of Destiny Child, but it was her father that promoted her and put her above the rest. you see.
Right.
So it's the same story. It's the same energy, you see, of the perpetrator, you know, one who is, and this is what my spirit told me what the Antichrist means. It's the spirit of anyone who's perpetrating themselves as something they're not.
Right.
You see.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, even when they talk of, go ahead.
It's deception is what you're referring to.
Yes.
The Antichrist is deception.
Yes, deception. And because my spirit is the one that woke me up. Now, I don't know how far you want me to go on the show, but my spirit is the one who woke me up saying Obama's nation. Then it brought it together, abomination.
Right.
And then I went to look up the scripture, and the first thing it said was about the Antichrist. It said he stands in a place he ought not. That was the first thing, which means he stands as a black man, which he is not.
Right.
It says he comes up to a small people. He charms the people. He denounces the God of his father. When he denounced Minister Farrakhan, that was in essence of denouncing the God of his father, the Muslim. And then, you know, it says he lifts himself above God. Well, he has the black God, the white God, the Jewish God, and the Muslim God.
Well,
so he doesn't have
right too. I mean, you know, so I think he was fair in his denouncements. Let's put it that way.
Yes, absolutely. What they say, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because if you attack his black side, the black people are going to defend him. If you attack his white side, the white people are going to defend him. If you attack his Jewish side, the Jewish people are going to defend him. If you attack his Muslim side, they're going to defend him.
No, it's a perfect strategy.
Absolute
it's a
power.
perfect strategy. Absolutely. I would completely agree with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Getting back to Destiny's Child, I
yes.
found out two things I found that were interesting.
Yes.
Destiny's Child they're putting together kind of a comprehensive best of. That's part of the reason why they were on stage with Beyonce. Nothing happens by accident, right?
Right.
And they are doing a new song. And the new song that they're going to be doing together is called Nuclear. Nuclear.
Wow.
Okay? Now, if you go back in time to, I believe it's 2008, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just make my check here. It was 2000 and it's a little earlier than that. I believe it's 2001. Anyway, there's a movie called The Sum of All Fears.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and it's with Ben Affleck, and he plays Jack Ryan. And in that movie, there is a scene where there is I believe it's either a Super Bowl or a very important game being played where? In Baltimore.
Okay.
And what happens in that movie is that there is a nuclear explosion.
Oh, wow.
In Baltimore. The Sum of All Fears, 2001, with Ben Affleck playing Jack Ryan. So now we have The Sum of All Fears, the movie where there's a scene where you actually see the explosion from afar, and then you have Destiny's Child singing or going to sing their new song, their Nuclear, and then what did we have during the ritual of the Super Bowl? It was a ritual of light. It was pure light.
Yes. Wow, absolutely. Wow, there was so much going on with that. And then Beyonce came out, they had an image of her. They had an image of her, a big image of her as she came and stood and took a pose exactly like the image, you see. So, and then they talk about the Antichrist and the beast that comes together at the end and makes them honor the image, or they have to worship this image. So I thought it was interesting to see her standing up with that, them showing an image of her, and her standing up there in that. So as far as Destiny Child, I mean, I don't understand why they would even come and perform for the amount of time that she gave them on the stage. To me, it was just a purely Beyonce concert.
It's symbolic. The Destiny's Child thing, I think, is symbolic.
Yeah, you know.
That's what I think.
And I understood they were trying to get a third one to come, but they couldn't accomplish that. So they had to end up with just the two. So I definitely wouldn't have, not for that amount of exposure that they were given. I mean, it was purely about Beyonce. And I just think that in the same way that the Mama Universe chastised Janet Jackson, I think that Beyonce is on her way for a fall. Now, get this. This is what really knocked my socks off as I, started looking at all of the details. My thing is that I don't think, as above, so below. We were going to see the lowest and the highest connotations of the energy. And I'm thinking that the physical Super Bowl is only a micro of the macro astrological cycle. So Big Mama or Mama Universe's game doesn't start until Aries or March 21st. Mm-hmm. And what she's going to do is simulate the energy you saw in the physical for Super Bowl is going to be simulated at a higher level, and it's going to be the same energy. You're going to be able to see that same energy unfold over the years through the astrological cycle starting in Aries by quarters. And in that sense, the lights went out, and when the lights go out, that's symbolic of power going down.
Right.
So I look at that like, 2 days after the third quarter of the astrological cycle, look for the power of the nation to fall. And the third quarter starts with Libra, mm-hmm. September 23rd. And if they played 2 days or 2 minutes into that game at the third quarter, that means I put it at 2 days. So we're looking maybe at September 25th because that adds up to a 7.
Right.
34 adds up to a 7. The 34 was a reoccurring theme because the score was 34 to 31. The 34 and the 13, because if you superimpose the 31, you get 13. 49 adds up to 13, you see.
Right.
So 34. And when the lights went down, the score was 28 to 6, which adds up to 34.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that it's symbolic that the power will fall 2 days after we go into the third quarter of the astrological cycle, which is September the 23rd. 2 days after that would be September 25th, which will add up to that 7.
Right.
And this power will fall all the way through the third quarter. Now, let me give you some other information that someone sent me when it came to Beyonce and the Super Bowl. They called it the Super Bowl fourth quarter satanic message to the masses. Lucifer's disciples are promising that the year 2013 will be a thrilling fourth quarter. A teaser commercial was released prior to the game, building an anticipation of something that was coming. One variant of the commercial stated something powerful is coming, while another something sinister is coming.
Right.
So I'm going to move down. They had a flyer, and this year we guarantee a thrilling fourth quarter, February 3rd, 2013, Set Your Soul Free. This was put out by Mercedes-Benz.
Right.
And it says, look at the emphasis of the date below the words in the ad. Note the 13 going up in flames. Pay attention to the word this year and fourth quarter.
Yes,
the fourth quarter of the year runs from October 1st to December 31st.
Yeah.
Keep in mind the history of America in years and Congresses marked by the number 13. During the 13th Congress, Washington, D.C. was burned with fire by the British. The 113th Congress was just seated. Many signs are pointing to the 2-year period of this Congress being equally calamitous for America as a nation.
Yeah.
Even the Mercedes-Benz symbol with its 3 spokes and triangle triangular design is a reference to the Luciferian trinity of Nimrod, Isis, Horus, and Seb. The words are not speaking about the Super Bowl game. They are a reference to the year 2013, okay, a thrilling fourth quarter. And it goes on to say, inside the stadium, the entire nation was represented. There was an East Coast team and a West Coast team, and they met in the middle of the nation. The span of the entire continent from east to west was represented, brother against brother, faced off in a great conflict. The halftime show was marked by darkness and flames. The game itself experienced a sudden plunge into darkness at the beginning of the third quarter. Using the 13-minute Illuminati halftime show as a pattern, the darkness will be followed with the eruptions of flames. It will end in death, as was signified by Beyonce lying prone on the stage at the end of her performance.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot of meat on those bones, and I would totally agree with just about everything that was written there. The brother versus brother theme is something that I picked up on and have been writing about on my website, and it really became very prevalent in the aftermath of Sandy Hook, and the talk of not just gun control and taking guns away, although that was part of it, but the language has been very aggressive. I mean, there was a statement by Charles Rangel, who is from New York. He's a representative from New York. And Rangel essentially said, hey, we got a problem with the South. It's a culture problem with the South. And this was in reference to gun control and taking guns away. Like, we've got to solve that. And everything that I've been picking up on based on the aftermath of Sandy Hook, especially with the brother versus brother piece, is that I think what we're being primed for here, Sister MyRah, is another civil war. This is what I feel, and I think that this is part of a lot of the events around the Super Bowl and post Super Bowl that have been taking place. I want to bring up another piece here with you, and I wonder how much you paid any attention, if at all, to a young man by the name of Chris Culliver, who was he played for the 49ers. He had a terrible game. He might have had a worse week than the game, if that's possible. He was approached by Artie Lang, and Artie Lang asked him how he would feel if one of his teammates was gay. And Culliver had what I thought was probably a typical football locker room response, which was, not in here. We don't take that sweet stuff in here. Take it somewhere, no how, no way. That was his response. He was chastised by the media, and by the end of the week, he's contrite. He's agreeing to taking, essentially, awareness, aka behavioral modification classes, and this was an interesting kind of backstory. Chris Culliver happens to be a Virgo, by the way. And what was really interesting is I looked up his last name, and his last name Culliver is related to the word culver.
Oh my, yes.
Culver, and the vulgar Latin translation of culver is columba.
Oh, wow.
So what we had in the persona of Chris Culliver is Christopher Columba.
Oh my. You see, that's
And so now we have the public crucifixion of Christopher Columbus.
Wow.
Place. And I'm not sure how all this fits in, but I just thought it was interesting that he was the one person that became, in some ways, the sacrificial lamb. And then I read about, there's all kinds of strange intrigue about Columbus in his life, that he was a member of a branch of the Priory Zion and Freemasonry. Cannot be confirmed, by the way, but people talk about that. but the end of his life was pretty bad. I mean,
yes.
he was called back from being governor of Hispaniola and spent, I think it was 2 to 3 years in chains. And
oh my.
Yeah, so he, his end game was not very good. And so he himself had his own form of crucifixion, or an imitation of Christ, an
yes.
imitation of, Christopher Christ. And
yes.
that's what we had in the Super Bowl with Chris Culliver, another
yes.
crucifixion
yes.
in the public eye. So he had another
yes.
imitation of Christ. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. And what I can see is, I mean, I think it's some ominous connotations going on here, for the nation, because, that would be symbolic of Christopher Columbus, and his fall,
yes.
his crucifixion of the nation, because, like you said, we're going into the New World Order, you see. So it's time to take down any sovereign nations. It's time to take down sovereignty when it comes to nations. So this is like telling us, above our heads that, they're about to take the nation down, you see. And the fall, the crucifixion, and, as I said with the Steelers and the Packers game, it just gave us a timeline of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
So it's about character versus degradation, and degradation won. So this is what we're looking at for the future of the nation, that is being taken over by degradation. Yeah. And, and like I always say, it's like the same thing happened with I think in a Miss America pageant, where they asked the woman, what do you think about marriages? And she was saying, I think marriage should be between a man and a woman, and she was crucified for that.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, you had, I think, a transgender, and they ticked her off, but even Donald Trump came to her defense, and they ended up putting her back in the pageant and changing the rules to support that. You
right.
See? Yeah. And then you had Chick-fil-A came out, and they have been crucified and persecuted. I read a minister that didn't want to perform a marriage, and he has been taken to court. So now it's like, this is the new normal now. We're supposed to, and again, I have to say, I don't have anything against, homosexuality on a personal level, but what's good at the personal level is going to be opposite for what you validate at a collective level. And it's not that I'm saying that it's not right, but I'm saying, to persecute homosexuality, but it's also not right to persecute those who are not in agreement that, heterosexual and homosexual relationships are equal or are the same. I don't think that's true, you see.
Let me ask you a question
yes.
about this.
Yes.
Because there are people that are in the fight, quote unquote, for equal rights as it relates to, same-sex marriage, and they equate their struggle to the civil rights struggle. How do you feel about that? How do you? That
incenses me. I don't. That is not. They're not comparable to me. You see. That does incenses me when they do that, because it is not the same. To be persecuted for your color versus persecuted for your sexual proclivity. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I don't. They use that as a banner, to get support. But I don't think they are the same. I don't think that you should equate those two rights. Struggles for equal rights. And I don't have anything against them having equal rights. It's just that when you want to say that, it's the government now trying to cram it down our throat.
No, it's the mandate. It is the mandate, and I agree with you. You and I are in 100% agreement with that. I want to play a commercial for you. And there are a lot of commercials.
Okay.
During the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And the Mercedes-Benz commercial, which you talked about, was quite interesting on a number of levels, especially due to the fact that Willem Dafoe played the devil. And we know, or at least some of us remember, that Willem Dafoe also played Jesus Christ in Marty Scorsese's film, actually a failed Jesus. So here we have another inference or reference to Christ along with Chris Culver. But here's another commercial I want to play for you. This is the Volkswagen commercial, okay?
Okay.
And on one level, it sounds really cute and cheery, but I want us to listen to it, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards and kind of get into maybe there may be some deeper meaning behind this cheery Volkswagen commercial. Here we go.
Okay.
I hate Mondays.
Yeah, they're the worst.
No worries, man. Everything will be all right. Yeah, man. Oh, don't fret me, brother. Sticky bun comes soon. Yeah. Wicked coffee, Mr. Jim. Julia, turn the frown the other way around.
Hey, Dave, you're from Minnesota, right?
Yes, the land of 10,000 lakes. The Gopher State.
So in conclusion, things are pretty dismal.
You know what this room needs? A smile. Who wanna come with I? Traveling along, there's a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy.
You guys are 3 minutes late.
Don't be no cloud on a sunny day.
Yeah, chill, Winston.
Sir?
Respect, bossman.
That's the power of German engineering.
That's the power of German engineering.
Wow.
Now, what is? I mean, just think about that. We've just seen a white guy from Minnesota.
Yes.
Break down this really funky, soulful Jamaican patois.
Yes.
And that's the power of German engineering.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that commercial. But I didn't catch the German connotation, but of course we're talking about the Volkswagen. So
that's right.
And here again, the Jamaican connotation here, the Lion of Judah, you see.
Right.
Which is also dealing with the Leo energy.
That's right. Yeah.
And they use Bob Marley with the One Love thing, you see.
Yeah.
Because Bob Marley had a black mother but a white father.
Right.
But he fathered many other children by white women, you see. So in the movie I Am Legend, Will Smith used Bob Marley to say, well, this is how we will wipe out racism, is in the One Love thing where everybody becomes one race, you see.
Yeah.
So I think it's all going toward that connotation there, you see.
It's
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that commercial is German engineering is so powerful. It can put the soul of a black man into a white man.
Yes. Okay. That sounds appropriate for what they were symbolizing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah. And Robert, what I did was DVR the Super Bowl, and I went and watched it again yesterday. And what got me was the very, very first commercial. They were advertising a movie called World War, and that's coming out in June. And then there was there were many things that dealt with the fall of this nation. They had a commercial that came on. It was another movie called Into Darkness, a Star Trek, Into Darkness.
Absolutely. Just before the lights went out, right?
Yes, and you hear a man, the white man says, "I am better," and then the voice says, "At what?" And he says, "Everything. I'm better at everything." And then the lady that played in Avatar, the black lady that played the role in Avatar, she's kissing the white man. And then he says, "You think your world is safe. It is not. Yeah. Your world will fall." Okay? Now, come on. This is all in the commercial. Yeah. And then they get back to, as you were saying, they get back to another commercial where they had the same black lady from Avatar and Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder was performing magic.
Oh, Stevie Wonder was Baron. Yeah, he was Baron Samedi. That's what his persona was.
Yeah, and he would play. They would play the song "Superstition," and there was a black man and a white man that was dragging this chair, which they wanted to make their luck. They dragged it to Stevie Wonder to change, to make it a magical chair or their lucky chair. And Stevie said, "I don't do chairs." And that's when the lady from Avatar came and she said, "Well, I'll do it." And then she pops herself in the chair, and then she says, "How much luck do you need?" Now, someone once told me when a white man gets with a black woman, it's called a change of luck. Had you heard that?
I have not. I have not heard that.
Yeah, I was told that. The change of luck. When a white man gets with a black woman, it's called a change of luck.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
And she goes, "How much luck do you need?" And then the white man, a different white man comes in and claims the chair and sits down in it. So I was thinking that it was her passing the power to the white man, saying changing the luck. I think all these connotations were in there. Changing this one love. No allegiance to national identity.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, Obama, he doesn't have to have an allegiance to anyone. He wants to come in and erase all boundaries, erase all national identity. Yeah. They need to do that in order to issue in this one world government.
Yeah.
They need to take us out of having any identification, with national pride.
Right.
But everybody is not okay with that, you see. But they want to make it okay. They want it to be accepted as okay. And I think that is the theme that is running throughout, the programming, the subliminal programming that they are.
I would agree with you. I would completely agree. And in fact, even when you look at the title for the Mercedes-Benz commercial, the name of the commercial is called Soul, right?
Wow.
So we're talking about obviously soul, but we're also talking about, soul power, soul music, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, because that's why I do watch the commercials throughout the Super Bowls, because you'll see, the tweaking. You'll see what it is that they're trying to symbolize. Even in the Super Bowl, it'll be all up in there, because you did see a lot of magic going on. Where they came to Stevie Wonder, he made a voodoo doll.
Right.
He made a voodoo doll of the 49ers voodoo doll, and then when the guy went to the game, he was sitting next to a Raven fan who also had a voodoo doll of the Ravens. So,
right.
They're definitely mixing it up.
Speaking of mixing it up, Colin Kaepernick, who is a mixed race, by the way, his mother is Italian, unknown father. Interesting Kaepernick is an interesting character on many levels. And he has adorned his body with scripture from the Bible. And of course, that was played up in a very big way in the week leading up to the Super Bowl. Well, he just had a new tattoo put onto his kind of assemblage. And it's interesting because his new tattoo, everything before had been, like I said, words from the Bible. This new tattoo is not biblical at all. It is primal. I believe it's Maori or tribal. And in some people's minds, they would consider that pagan, right?
Yes.
So now Kaepernick has gone through this transformation and has taken on this more tribal kind of look and feel. Do you have any thoughts on that and what that might symbolize?
It's like I just feel like they're trying to erase all lines of identity. You see, they're trying to obscure that. I think he's a Capricorn, isn't he? I think I looked it up.
He's a Scorpio.
Oh, he's a Scorpio.
And he's got Pluto. Check this out. He's got Pluto conjunct his Sun with a 1-degree orb. So he's got Pluto in Scorpio conjunct his Sun in Scorpio, separated by 1 degree. This guy is. Trust me, he is Scorpio.
Okay. I don't dispute you on. I did look up some of the signs here, and maybe I got him confused.
Flacco's the Capricorn.
Flacco's the Capricorn or Virgo?
No, he's a Capricorn.
Okay. Here again, and something I always see is that the Grammys is usually connected with the Super Bowl, with the Whitney Houston ritual and all of that.
Yeah, that's right.
And they brought Justin Timberlake back out, and I think Justin Timberlake represents the new black man. In other words, he's replacing the black man, because he was the one that dethroned Janet Jackson with that costume malfunction. And he hasn't been on the stage since then, so they brought him out at the Grammys, and he's got all the moves and the look and the style of the new black man.
Right.
I think what they're doing is they're creating a new identity when it comes to a new black, and they're creating a new white for you.
That's interesting. I track a lot of commercials.
Yes.
And I've been noticing over the course of the past year or so that the frequency of black males showing up in commercials and black families in general is off the charts. There are more black males and black families in commercials than in any other time I can remember in the TV. And I don't have a problem with that because I think...
No, I understand what you're saying because it goes exactly to the theme that I've been looking at, because it's all about, they want to take down the black mama. Okay?
Well, I think you're right because let me just go a little bit further with this.
Yes.
When I look at the black males that are portrayed in these commercials,
yes,
and this is not a slight towards anyone,
yes,
but they are all generally light-skinned black males.
Yes.
And I think part of it is because we have a mixed president whose complexion is lighter skinned. So I think that there would be some kind of commercial payoff with having, guys in commercials that look like the president. I mean, I think it's really just a money thing, right?
Well, like I said, they're creating a new black for you, okay? Right. And those who are of the vein of the president, this is the good black. See, there was a few years ago, they had Serena Williams, get very upset because she was being cheated. And like black women, we're very emotional, and she couldn't contain her emotions by being cheated. So they talked about that. They talked about how bad she was. And right at the heels of that, you had the music awards, and this is where Kanye West takes the mic from Taylor Swift, to talk about Beyonce.
Right.
So when they took it to the Obama, he says he calls Kanye West a jackass. Okay. So what I got out of this is that Serena Williams, bad black woman. Beyonce, good black woman. Obama, good black man, and Kanye West, the bad black man. So they're giving you a contrast, like you said, according to the complexion of who they want to define as acceptable black versus unacceptable black. So they're trying to give us a new identity of what is, how it's right to be black, you see. And I heard a guy on my Facebook page was saying, well, if Obama is, the good black man, what does that make me? Since I'm nothing like him.
Right.
So I think this is definitely the vein that is trying to premate the subconscious, the programming. You see. So,
it definitely feels that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, so this is, in other words, we have to conform to we have to conform to valuing ourselves using Obama or Beyonce as a gauge to how acceptable we can be to society as black people.
Right, and in the repercussions, and I'm just postulating, right, but the repercussions would be if I were a black woman and, my complexion was darker rather than lighter, and I'm looking around at this social representation of what's acceptable or what's successful, at some level I'm thinking, hey, I've got to lighten up here. If I want to have a child that is going to be, rewarded for his complexion, I need to go find a white man, or I need to go find a light-skinned black man, because this is what is, is being promoted. I don't feel good about that. I think that's
absolutely. When I saw that Serena Williams Beyonce thing, I saw that through the eyes of a child, that looked like Serena Williams, and what she would think, as she looked at, them promoting Beyonce as good and Serena as bad, and what she would think about herself. This is continuing to promote a self-hatred, which, we have always, this is what we have been under, and that's why I said the attack is on the black mama, because, that is why they're using the black man as a weapon against the black woman. And this is what I saw when it came to the Steelers, okay?
Right.
And the new coach, what's his name? The black coach?
Omar Epps.
Oh, yeah, he looks like Omar Epps, but that's not his name.
Mike Tomlin. His name is Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin. And now, what I noticed, when Dallas, the football player got killed in the Dallas organization, they say that the guy that he was riding in the car with, he got out of the car and was walking away, and there were two black women that said they could hear his friend calling for help, and he said, oh, he don't want me to help him, and the friend died, okay? Right. Then 2 weeks after this incident, they played the Steelers, and the guy was on the sideline.
That's right.
And a lot of the commentators had a problem with this, and they talked to Bill Cowher, the old coach for the Steelers.
Right.
And he was saying, he had a problem with it also, that, the moral barometer, was definitely falling in the NFL. So I found it very interesting, the contrast between him staying true to the moral barometer, while Mike Tomlin, I think he was intentionally set because the Steelers represent the royal daughter of character, and he was put on that team to degrade the character of the Steelers, symbolically degrading the value of black women, you see. So he's made some very questionable calls. Like I said, I think they laid down on the Packers game, and I think they've been laying down ever since. In the game where they played Baltimore this year. They had a chance to win the division. He didn't even put in the running back, our main running back, Mendenhall.
Well,
now, Mendenhall came out.
That's a really interesting piece, and we're running out of time, but the Mendenhall piece is fascinating because Mendenhall
came out and condemned them for celebrating the death of, who was that?
Bin Laden, right.
Bin Laden.
And he also not only condemned it, he questioned it.
Yes. And he got chastised as a result of that.
And I'll tell you right now, there's a chance that Richard Mendenhall may not ever really play again in the NFL. I'm going to tell him, and it's unfortunate. He's a bright young man. He's a Gemini. He likes to communicate, and he was putting out a thought that I think a lot of other people have had. And it's unfortunate that he's a professional athlete, and the National Football League is extremely conservative when it comes to that. So, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
But I think Tomlin he was put in that position to, to do this to the Steelers, symbolic of taking down the black woman, the same way that Obama was made the head of this nation, a black face. They needed a black face to go and desolate the lands, especially the black lands like Africa, Haiti, and the black people here in the United States. I think he was put to degrade us and take us down and make us look, bad. The same with Tomlin. I think they're using that, the black man, as a tool to take down, the black woman.
Interesting stuff. Well, as always, our time has flown by here, Sister
All
Myra.
right.
And
wonderful.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you and hear some of your insights and your wisdom and knowledge. And if people want to find out more about what you do, where can they get a hold of you?
The best way is through my phone, which is 336-965-0180, or visit my Facebook page, and inbox me with any messages. And my email is MossMyRah, that's MossMyra @yahoo.com.
Okay, good. And if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, Sister MyRah and I are friends. We're mutual friends, so you can find her through me as well.
Yes.
Are you doing any classes or seminars anytime soon?
I am doing an astrological class, but I'm doing that on a one-on-one basis. So just contact me, and I can give you the details of how to set that up. I always do astrological charts as well as the card readings. And I'm supposed to be going to Baltimore in the spring to do my next presentation.
Okay, please don't tell them they're going to win the Super Bowl again next year, okay?
Okay, I won't.
I've had enough of Baltimore in my life.
All right.
All right, Sister MyRah, you take good care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Okay, there she is, the wonderful Sister MyRah. And there we go. Joining us for a breakdown of more Super Bowl symbolism and more. We got into some very interesting territory today. And I wasn't planning on going there, but Sister MyRah, is very open, and I appreciate the fact that she is open. And I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. So anyway, I really want to thank Brian Tuohy for calling in earlier and breaking down the oddities, the play calling and the rule oddities of the Super Bowl. And I want to thank Sister MyRah again for bringing her wisdom and her light and insight into the son and the mother of Super Bowl 47 and 49ers versus the Baltimore Ravens. So I'll be back on Wednesday, Navigating the Astrological Matrix, and Friday, Alfred Labermont-Weber on the show. Don't miss him. Until then, have an amazing week. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the Monday Mashup.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu. perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words, I submit that these impressions are valid and significant. And I will even say this, such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.